Welcome to Tragic True Crime Cases. In this episode, we recount a heartbreaking story of a love triangle turned deadly. At the heart of this tragic tale were two sisters, Amy and Stephanie Lawrence, whose lives had long been bound by a complex tangle of love, rivalry, and unspoken resentments. Stephanie, the elder of the two, had always been the golden child, beautiful, accomplished, and married to the charming and successful architect James Williams. Their marriage was the envy of Provincetown, Massachusetts, a seemingly perfect union everyone else dreamed of mirroring. Born into a family of modest means, their father a local fisherman and their mother a school teacher, it was clear from the start that the two sisters were as different as night and day. Stephanie, with her serene grace, was her parents' pride. She excelled in school, was adored by teachers, and floated through the social circles of Provincetown with ease. Her future seemed predestined. Attend college, find a stable job, and settle down with a good man to start a family. Amy, by contrast, was a force of nature. From the moment she learned to walk, she exuded a wild energy that both fascinated and unsettled everyone around her. While equally intelligent, Amy's academic accomplishments were overshadowed by her rebellious spirit and desire to push against the boundaries. As they grew older, the rift between the sisters deepened. Stephanie pursued a degree in education, following in their mother's footsteps, while Amy floated through majors, never quite finding her place. It was during these years that Amy's manipulative tendencies started to reveal themselves. With a smile and quick wit, she could charm her way out of trouble, bending situations to her will. Amy's relationships were always intense but fleeting. She thrived on the rush of new love, only to grow bored once the excitement wore off. This pattern left a trail of broken hearts and resentful exes, cementing her place as the black sheep of Provincetown. Stephanie, meanwhile, returned to Provincetown after college and quickly caught the attention of James Williams, an up-and-coming architect. He had come to town to supervise the restoration of his historic lighthouse, but found himself captivated not only by the town's charm but also by Stephanie's beauty. Their courtship was swift and passionate, culminating in a fairy tale wedding that had the town buzzing for months. James's career soared, and soon they were living in a beautiful home overlooking the sea, their life together appearing like the perfect love story. Yet beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage, cracks began to form. Stephanie, ever the dutiful wife and daughter, found herself yearning for something more. She had sacrificed dreams of adventure and travel for the sake of her marriage, and a part of her resented the compromises she had made. James, for his part, struggled under the pressure of his growing career and the expectations of small-town life. He loved Stephanie deeply, but there were moments when he felt suffocated by the perfect image they were forced to maintain. Into this fragile balance re-entered Amy. Having spent years drifting from city to city, she returned to Provincetown, claiming to want to reconnect with her roots. In reality, she was fleeing from another failed relationship and mounting debts, seeking refuge in the one place she knew would accept her. Stephanie, ever the loving sister, welcomed Amy with open arms, offering her a place to stay until she found her footing. She turned. But as Amy settled into the Williams household, the dynamics between the three shifted almost imperceptibly at first. At first, her presence seemed to breathe new life into Stephanie and James's relationship. The evenings filled with laughter and reminiscing, the sisters catching up on lost years, with James playing the dutiful husband and brother-in-law. But as time wore on, Amy's true intentions began to surface. Her gaze lingered on James a moment too long, and her casual touches became more frequent, more deliberate. She found excuses to be alone with him, asking for help with her car, seeking advice on job prospects, or simply catching him in the kitchen late at night after Stephanie had gone to bed. James, initially oblivious to Amy's advances, found himself drawn to her magnetic personality. Where Stephanie was stable and predictable, Amy was spontaneous and exhilarating. She listened to his architectural ideas with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that made him feel truly seen. In those moments, James experienced a spark he hadn't felt in years. James was a man of honor, deeply devoted to his wife and their life together. He tried to distance himself from Amy, making excuses to spend more time at the office or to take on extra projects that kept him away from home. But Amy was relentless. She recognized the internal battle in his eyes and saw it as a challenge rather than a deterrent. She began to weave an intricate web of seduction, playing on his insecurities and unfulfilled desires. One evening, as Stephanie attended a school board meeting, Amy orchestrated a seemingly innocent dinner with James. She prepared his favorite meal, poured a bottle of expensive wine, and set the stage for an intimate evening. As they spoke late into the night, Amy skillfully steered the conversation toward James's unspoken dreams and passions, areas where she knew Stephanie had never fully connected with him. James felt an overwhelming rush of emotions, flattery, desire, and an intense wave of guilt. He tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but Amy had already sensed her advantage. She leaned in closer, her hand brushing his. Don't you ever wonder what it'd be like to be truly understood, to be with someone who sees you for who you really are? The tension in the room was palpable. James knew he should leave, should stop before things went any further, but something about Amy's presence kept him frozen. As her lips met his in a heated kiss, James's resistance crumbled. In that moment, the foundation of his marriage began to crack, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to a tragedy none of them could foresee. The following weeks blurred into a haze of stolen moments and growing guilt. What had begun as a fleeting lapse in judgment quickly spiraled into a full-blown affair. James and Amy found increasingly inventive ways to meet without raising suspicion. Their encounters ranged from hasty meetings in James's office to carefully planned trips that allowed them to escape Provincetown's watchful eyes. Amy reveled in the thrill of their secret romance, each stolen moment fueling her sense of victory over her sister. For James, the affair was a heady mixture of excitement and self-loathing, each secret rendezvous leaving him exhilarated but drowning in guilt. Amy, ever the master manipulator, knew exactly how to keep James hooked. She alternated between passionate lover and vulnerable confidant, listening intently as he spoke about his frustrations with work and his unfulfilled ambitions, offering the validation he so desperately craved. "I'd never met anyone like you, James," she would whisper. "You deserve so much more than this small town can offer you." Her words were carefully chosen, planting seeds of discontent in James's mind, showing him the life they could have together, a life free from the constraints of small-town expectations. As James grew more enamored with Amy, the weight of his guilt grew heavier, manifesting in erratic behavior and emotional distance. The double life he was living began to take its toll. Amy, sensing James's internal conflict, doubled down, becoming more demanding of his time and more insistent in her declarations of love. Her manipulations grew more overt, playing on his guilt and desires in equal measure. Neither Amy nor James realized that their carefully constructed house of cards was about to come tumbling down. The truth, as it so often does, was quietly making its way to the surface. While James and Amy were lost in their passion, Stephanie was slowly piecing together the puzzle she never wanted to solve. At first, the signs were subtle. A faint trace of unfamiliar perfume on James's clothes, phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room, a growing emotional distance between them. Stephanie, ever the optimist, first attributed these changes to stress or a midlife crisis. But as the weeks passed, the cracks in the facade became undeniable. One afternoon, while doing laundry, Stephanie found a matchbook from a hotel in a nearby town tucked into the pocket of James's jacket, one that was nowhere near his usual business haunts. The discovery sent a chill through her. Her worst suspicions had been confirmed, and the realization hit her with the force of a wrecking ball. Torn between confronting them or letting the truth continue to fester, Stephanie found herself trapped in a state of constant anxiety. She withdrew from friends, unable to speak the truth that haunted her thoughts. Sleepless nights filled with nightmares turned her mind into a spiral of doubt and suspicion. She began to scrutinize James and Amy, watching them like a hawk, searching for any sign that might confirm her fears. In a desperate moment, Stephanie even considered hiring a private investigator, but the thought of strangers prying into her private life was unbearable. Instead, she decided to confront both James and Amy, hoping one of them would crack under the weight of her suspicions and reveal the truth. Stephanie's pursuit of truth would soon lead to a confrontation more devastating than she could have imagined, one that would change all their lives forever. That day came on a stormy afternoon in late autumn. Stephanie had spent the morning steeling herself for this moment, rehearsing her words, trying to maintain composure. When James walked through the door, his coat wet from the rain, he was met with a tense silence. The moment was electric, thick with anticipation. "We need to talk," Stephanie began, her voice quivering despite her best efforts. "I know about you and Amy." James's face drained of color, the guilt in his expression confirming her worst fears. He opened his mouth but found no words. Before he could respond, Amy entered the room, her face a mask of unreadable emotion. The two sisters locked eyes, and in that instant the weight of betrayal became too much for Stephanie to bear. A scream tore from her chest as she crumpled to the floor, overwhelmed with grief. "Anyway," cried Doll, "why would you tell him such things? Because he was a boy, he had to be high stick." James rushed to her side, but Stephanie pushed him away, her heart breaking as she realized the full extent of the deception. The days that followed were a blur of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. Stephanie's world had shattered and there was no going back. She tried to understand how everything had fallen apart so completely, how the man she had trusted and the sister she had loved could betray her in such a way. The truth, soon whispered throughout Provincetown, was even worse than anyone could have imagined. Stephanie's suspicions had been right. James and Amy had been in a secret affair for months. The revelation shook the small town to its core. People who once admired the perfect couple now whispered in hushed tones, unsure how to reconcile the truth with the image they had once held of James and Stephanie. Devastated, Stephanie withdrew from public life. She remained in her home, disconnected from friends and family, spiraling into depression. Her marriage ended, and their beautiful home was sold off to settle debts. Months later, Stephanie's tragic death came as a shock to everyone. Found in the very house she once shared with James, her death remained mysterious. Some suspected foul play, others suicide, but the truth was never uncovered. What was clear, however, was that her death was the painful result of the betrayal she had endured. James and Amy were never charged, but their lives were irrevocably changed. They continued their affair, but it was never the same. Without Stephanie's presence to shield them, their love was consumed by guilt, shame, and the haunting memory of what they had lost. As we conclude this chapter of tragic true crime cases, we are reminded of the unpredictable nature of the human heart. Thank you for joining us as we explore the depths of passion and peril. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep an eye on the mysteries that surround us. Interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Have any thoughts about this case or a case of your own to share? Hey,